Well, good morning. Well, this seems like a bit of a new environment to start one of these vlogs in. More on that later. First, just doing myself a morning brew, and then we're going to go out and see what we can catch for sunrise. Welcome to Photographer in a Camper Van. Well, good morning from beautiful Donegal. One of the phenomenal things about travelling in the camper van is, of course, now sunrise isn't crazy early this morning, it's 8:10, it's about 7:30 now. But as those sunrises get earlier, and in fact those sunsets get later, my bed's just up the way there, so just kind of come down here. Now, this tide is fast approaching. It's not high tide yet. High tide's in about another hour and a half. It does advance because of this little inlet pretty quickly, and you can see sort of where because the high tide last night would have been, I don't know, 9:30 or something. The chances of anyone else being down here after that, limited, which means that the high tide mark is probably where it's sort of nice and clean. And obviously there has been some sort of bird or maybe a dog down there, but so I'm not going to step into the scene too quickly because, of course, once my footprints are in there, then this kind of shot's gone. But having said that, at the moment I think the separation between this and where the lovely glow is in the water is a little bit too much. Now, we don't get the sunrise on the horizon here. The sun is rising kind of over this way. There's some little bit of colour in the sky, a little bit of clouds in the sky. So what I might do is I might forgo this particular shot until the tide comes up a little bit more, and instead focus on the far rock. So let's go down and give that a go. So I'm set up with the XT2 in the 18-135, just in a horizontal composition, and just making use of kind of some of the flow around these rocks. Now, I like the fact that we've got these clouds in the sky. Now, obviously, we're even on the linear view on the GoPro, it's quite a wide angle of view, but you can see the sort of angle of view that we have here. And I think without that line of clouds in the sky, it does get rather boring. So, at the moment, I haven't got any filters on, kind of getting my composition all set up. Now, as I said, we don't have that long, so you can see how quickly this tide's actually coming in, which means we'll soon be pushed back. But the nice thing about it is we'll be able to start using some of these other rocks as well. So I'll probably end up putting a 4-stop ND on here from FORMATT HITECH, and also probably maybe a 2-stop soft edge grad. I may be able to get away with the soft edge grad at the moment, but certainly a 4-stop just to slow that shutter speed down a little bit. So let's go ahead and get that set up. This composition that I'm kind of working on now, I've moved around just to focus more on these beautiful stones here, as I say, kind of this kind of view. Now, if you look here, this peak, a little sort of peak up, it was breaking through the horizon, and that was kind of frustrating me. So, of course, I think it was actually Joe Cornish who once said he carries a stepladder with him. And, absolutely, if I had room in the van for a stepladder, I'd be definitely putting one in. Because as I raise myself up, obviously I change my field of view, my perspective on that little sort of spike. And while I can't completely get it under the horizon, it's now much, much less. Now, what I've done is I've actually extended my tripod legs, all 3 of them, all the way up. Ideally, I'd have a bigger tripod. But hey, so that's what I'm kind of looking for now. Obviously, I don't mind the rest of the rocks because there's quite a big bulk, but it was just that one little sort of peak that was kind of frustrating me. So I've got the 4-stop ND grad on from Format HITECH. As I say, what I'm doing is I'm kind of, obviously we don't get the sunrise as I said earlier, so now what I'm looking for is take advantage of those reflective surfaces that are taking on some of that morning colour. And of course, just here, not only do we have the lovely reflective surfaces, but we've got that lovely Tom Swishery as well. So now my composition is really just focusing on these particular rocks as I get continuously pushed back. Now, ideally, what I would want is some of those clouds above here. So obviously I'm pointing my camera a bit down more to reduce the amount of sky that I'm actually bringing into the frame. Say 4-stop ND grad. Again, at the moment I'm not having to use any graduated filters, just the standard filter. Here comes the tide. Beautiful morning, absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, 4-stop ND grad. I'm on f13. 5 seconds. It's probably a little bit too much for me now. Now, as the ambient light starts to increase, that 5 seconds is obviously going to decrease. I probably want it slightly less, so I'm going to keep my aperture as it is. But I'm actually going to increase my shutter speed or my ISO just a little bit, because I think I want that shutter speed about 3 seconds. So I'm going to play about with the ISO now, get a 3-second exposure, and then I think I'm going to have to be pushed back just a little bit as those waves come in. So we now actually have some lovely colour going on in the sky. So starting to work my composition to include a little bit more of that. And also now, as the tide pushes me back, using both the rocks in the foreground here, but also the lovely patterns the tide has actually made. Just gorgeous, look at that there, it's just beautiful. So yeah, so still in a horizontal composition, still got my Format HITECH 4-stop ND on. I'm actually shooting a couple of bracketed exposures now. Had a little bit of a mishap with my ND grad. I took a bit of a face plant into the sand, and while I have a couple of others, I really needed that 3-stop. So rather than clean it up in the field, I've carefully put it back into the put a bit of sort of water over it, and I'll clean it properly when I get back to the van. Too much of a risk doing it in the field and actually having some sand particles there. So I'm now shooting with 2 bracketed exposures. Basically the bracketed exposures doing the job of the grad. That's the thing I really like about the XT2 with the updated firmware. The fact that you can choose, you've got a lot more granularity over the exposures that you can do, the bracketed exposures. So I'm actually shooting just 2, and I'm shooting 1 stop below the original exposure, and that's allowing me to kind of retain the details in that beautiful sky. But yeah, so tide's really starting to push me back now. Sun has been up probably for about 20 minutes, so we're going to start losing this lovely pink glow. What I'd really like is maybe, I'm not sure when it's going to rise up over the headland, but just some of these you know, main dunes and grasses, but we'll see how we go. Oh, we have cormorant just taking off there. So what I'm doing here actually is just waiting for the tide to sort of touch the rock, and then as it recedes, it obviously leaves some residue behind, which actually then leads the eye into the scene. And of course, because my second exposure is for the sky, I'm not too fussed when it exposes, because it's only for the sky. The most important exposure is that first exposure, because that's what we're using to really draw the viewer into the scene. F13, 1.9 seconds for the first exposure. Wait for that tide to come up. 2 exposures, and a beautiful morning. And now, as they say, for something completely different. So I've moved away from the coast, or not from the coast, but from the shot I was taking, and look at the light here just on the headland across the way. But actually, I'm just kind of focusing in on, there's a lovely frost, just sort of taking on some of those grasses and stuff. So I'm actually just doing something a little bit kind of more intimate scene, which, as you know, I rather enjoy. So no filters, obviously very, not flat light, but very even light across the whole scene. So no filters, f13, I think it's about 1/10 of a second. Just something very simple, and I like actually the sort of the green, sort of the really green area, and then the sort of strands of almost hair kind of coming through. And you might not be able to make it out, but just there is our van. Or actually, my wife and my cat are fast asleep. Yeah, you heard it right. My wife and my cat. Half cat and camera will travel. Right, I'm going to head along the beach a little bit more and see whether I can find some more scenes like this. Well, that's me back in the van, as you can see. Wasn't really a huge amount of those hopeful, intimate details to be had anywhere, so with my toes starting to get ever more cold, I thought, back to the van. It's lovely and toasty and warm in here, the heating's been on. As I said, this is said cat, all snuggled down, so cool. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little bimble out this morning. Plenty more of this to come. I'm going to get some breakfast on now. I'm sure the other half who's still lying snuggled down there is going to be calling for her morning cuppa at some point. Oh, I think I heard some grumble there. So anyway, once again, thanks for watching. If you want to grab 10% off Format HITECH filters, then use the code COOK with an E, 10 down below. I've put that in there, and you can get 10% off your Format HITECH orders. Fantastic filters, really do love them, use them all the time. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll catch up again soon. See you later, bye bye.